Greetings and salutations from
Rona Gofstein and
Dr. Kevin, and we are here with
dragons and
unicorns
other creative creatures. And oh my, today is other creative creatures.
We have a commitment that I either want to do something that's inspiring or motivating,
Yep.
some little something. It can be a quote, it can be a positive news story,
Dirty
whatever.
meme?
Huh?
Dirty meme?
Dirty meme?
Okay, maybe not.
Well,
You guys have watched us before. You know, you never know. And if you're just joining us, we'll tell you, you never know.
Yeah, you never know. And if you are just joining us, I know that our show is expanding and getting picked up across the country. And if you are new to our viewing audience, please, email either Rona or myself. Let us know that your town has added dragons, unicorns, and other creative creatures on your local public access channel. If you're watching this on the internet or YouTube and you'd like to have it on your local channel,
Let us know that
may
too.
do that. Well, you can do that on your own, and you can send us an email, and we can explain how you can get dragons,
Unicorns.
and other creative creatures right on your big
Screen.
screen.
Everybody has pretty big televisions these days.
Yeah, I know.
They seem pretty big.
Well, that's because the majority of the time, men buy the televisions,
And
and men are all about size.
And all I can think of is Little Shop of Horrors and her talking about on her big, enormous 12-inch screen.
Yes.
Because once it was, that was huge.
Yes. Well, and you always have that whole thing of, the fish that got away was always that much bigger. Yeah. So anyways, moving right along.
Yes.
We have today's quote.
Oh,
and
good.
from today's quote, we'll talk about it for a second, but I'm excited to get our guest shown on camera.
Yes.
So therefore, I'm going to do this quote. We're going to talk about this quote for just briefly, and then you're going to introduce today's guest.
All right.
This is a quote by Naomi Wolf. There is this giant void in the culture about women in that age group as heroines, as romantic beings, as sexual beings, and as creative beings. And there's not that void for men. Women don't stop being all those things as their lives continue into those decades. I chose that quote because we have somebody today that's filling that gap for all she's worth, and she's going to get introduced in just a second. But also that it is so important. I mean, I remember my grandmother at 84, 85. She, her husband of 50 years had died. She then had a boyfriend that died. She had another boyfriend that died. She had a boyfriend that was asking her to move in with him.
Wore them out. Go grandma.
And I remember that the women that I was brought up in that generation, both my grandmothers, were women that were ahead of their time, and that they were women that went out and lived the world the way they wanted to live them. I am not going to pretend that passed on to my mother. I think she pendulum swinged the other way, unfortunately.
It happens. Yeah, things skip generations.
I'm not putting my mother down. I mean, she did manage to rack up 3 marriages in her life. But she didn't quite ever have the sass that her mother or her mother-in-law had.
It reminds me of the grandmother in Pippin.
Yeah, I love that. I love
her.
that. Yeah, I love that story. So anyways, I'm going to have you introduce today's guest, but it is so important for people to recognize that it is only that because of the scared to death, oversized boys who are the men that are in charge way too often, that women end up getting neutered, they end up getting put down, they get to a certain age,
they disappear off the screen, out of books, as Naomi said, off of television shows.
They get hidden. They're not. It's horrifying to think that your mother or your grandmother or your great grandmother might be going out and having a sex life. And so, speaking of that.
Oh, I'm so
You're gonna
happy.
introduce.
I'm so happy to introduce our guest today because this is a perfect segue. Mary Dumas is our guest today, and she's a jewelry, fashion, and stained glass artist. She's also a writer. She has a studio known as Pop Culture Place at the Western Avenue Studios in Lowell, which is the home of Oh my gosh, it's the home of Romeo X Julian, the book series, and we're going to talk about that. It's the home of the Dirty Old Ladies League, known as D.O.L.L, D-O.L.L, and the New England Resin Doll Society, known as NERDS. And Mary also is the producer of the Northeast Comic-Con and Collectibles Extravaganza, which I can't get over how big those are getting, as well as the founder of NaughtyCon, which is the 21 plus geek conference, which takes place in Provincetown, Mass. Every May. So eclectic and colorful and multifaceted are only the words I could only start to describe Mary.
So
welcome.
Mary, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm very
Who
anxious.
is this person you're talking about?
I met Mary years ago before I joined the crazy nut jobs over at Western Avenue Studios. And I think it was one of the things that struck me was that you weren't just one thing. It was so obvious just even walking into your studio, from the glass to the jewelry to the accessories and everything. It was just like, I'm not going to try to fit into anybody's round hole or a square hole. I'm everything. I'm everything I want to be. I loved it.
Well, when people come into my studio and they look around, I say, "Welcome to the place my brain threw up." It's everything that I enjoy and can put on a wall and think about, and by thinking about it can come up with creative things in other ways. Writing books, writing comic books, web comics, making big parties that nerds come to, and all that sort of thing.
And nothing slows you down. I mean, I don't say slows you down, but it's amazing to me how you keep finding the inspiration and how wonderfully open you are to, like, let's try something new. Let's try this. Let's try this. Let's do a whole event for this. Why not? See, let's just have an event and see who comes.
I think I'll throw a party for 500 of my closest friends,
Absolutely.
and I don't even know 80% of them yet.
No. So I always like to hear a little bit of the backstory. So we have Mary today, who who is fun and a little outrageous and somewhat tittillating.
My son refers to her as a role model. I think I must be doing something right.
I think your son's fabulous.
But has
did
this
you get there?
always been Mary, or was there a backstory Mary?
Okay, the first thing that I always tell people when they say, "Where did you come from?" By way of explanation, I was born in Salt Lake City, Utah. Went to the only Catholic high school in the state at the time. There's two now.
Oh, it's doubled.
And stayed for college because great skiing.
It's true.
But took up smoking, so the Mormon boys would stop asking me out.
That would work.
After that, my dear sister fixed me up on a blind date with a guy she always thought was just harmless. And that blind date and I have been married 35 years coming this February. So I've had the good life, if you will. I've had everything that I ever really wanted given to me or presented to me in a way that I could handle. And my husband was a naval officer and spent 23 years in the Navy. And when he was gone for 6 months at a time, I had to figure out how to be Mary, how to do what I wanted to do, or at least do things that kept my mind occupied. And I always had a job, but it was just usually a job. But when I really came into what I think my future is going to be was when we were stationed in California, and I was able to land a job at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. And I helped the catering for the Academy Awards in 1990 and the bid for the 1991 Academy Awards. We didn't win it. Wolfgang Puck, you know.
What a puck.
What a puck.
What a puck.
They'll never last.
But that's where I really said, this is probably my future, and I'll start looking into continuing this way. So that's how everything after the children sent off to high school and college. That's how I started doing what I'm doing now, which is experimenting with my creativity in making events, in working on the internet. Which, by the way, You know, the internet's not that old, okay?
It's not. It's
I
No.
mean,
a new medium.
getting involved with a webcomic is something
Yes,
that's not
that's-
something I thought of in 1990.
No. I mean, what you'll be creating in 10 years probably hasn't been created yet or using to create.
Yep. But it's funny because the webcomic that I've created back in the day, we used to call it slash.
Slash fiction, yes.
Slash fiction, making up things about boys liking other boys.
Oh,
Started with Star Trek fan fiction.
That's right, yeah. Oh, there was a huge amount of people that wanted Kirk and Spock to be together.
yes, I've heard that before.
This was the 70s, okay?
Oh yeah, well, but I always thought that McCoy and Spock would have made a more interesting couple, actually.
I'm sure you can find that too.
I think that Kirk should have stayed with Sulu.
Yeah, they love.
We could ask.
But so I'm doing this web comic that's based on Romeo and Juliet, obviously, but it's Romeo x Juliet, and it takes place in the modern times, in California, in the suburbs of San Francisco, and in it we have a young man who helps his family run a Renaissance festival.
Oh.
And when you're in a Renaissance festival type of person, you're very dramatic. And he decides that he's going to dress as a woman one day.
Well, they did that in Shakespeare's time.
That's
Oh
right.
yeah, yep. Men,
What
women were
happens
opposites.
when Romeo, who is coming in to visit the Renaissance Festival for the first time ever with his cousin, falls in love at first sight, as Romeos tend to do.
Yes, that is.
And
his,
then finds out that this girl he kissed is a boy.
And
so
he thinks he liked it.
And he thinks he liked it. So this is
Okay.
this is what the story is about, and it's also about rediscovering why a family would support or not support that kind of a decision about life. And because it's in San Francisco, it's a little more easy to write it, obviously, because there's open-minded people, but there's also still closed-minded people. But they're not the middle of America's closed-minded.
No, not what you would typically think. There's going to be more people accepting, and it's going to be a little easier. And there's going to be more people like-minded and like you,
Right.
which is helpful.
Right, but then there's also people who you'd think would be open-minded and like-minded, and they're even more closed-minded. But why? Why would they be closed-minded? Because everybody's different. Every human being has a different way of looking at being a human being. And so that's the nutshell story of Romeo x Juliet. But there's, of course, because it's PG-13 in Act 1 and it's R.
R by Act 2.
When we get to Act 2, and Act 3 is even more R, leaning towards X, because it's in the genre called yaoi, which is a Japanese affectation word for something that means nothing, and really is. That's
I
what
need
it
more
means.
words like that.
And it's men falling in love with other men. So it's
So it goes from PG to R to
Now, you said that the Romeo didn't realize he kissed another guy. Was this the first time he had kissed a man? for him? So is it
In this book, we're starting to find that out. And I don't want to ruin it for
Oh,
my
no, don't, definitely
webcomics
don't.
people.
Oh, yes.
Because we are at a discovery point in the webcomic.
cool.
But it appears to be the first time that he's actually recognized that there's other people that he might be drawn to, and it doesn't matter.
Right.
Maybe.
Maybe.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things is, and it's something that I've actually talked about. I do a lot of actually spiritually based work, and we are evolving so much less gender oriented than we used to be.
Yeah.
And I'm finding more young people are falling into, unless they're browbeaten otherwise, but they're falling into that, well, they're kind of all people. Now, I remember years ago, because, I'm actually getting married in 2 weeks,
Oh, congratulations.
and we're doing a Renaissance-themed wedding. And my
Where he
fiance,
will kiss a boy.
well, where I'll kiss a boy because my fiance is male. But you know, in my late teens, in my 20s, it was like I was ahead of the generation because I'd be kind of like, okay, well, you know, girl, boy, girl, oh, that was interesting. Oh, that was interesting. Oh, that was interesting. Oh, that was interesting. Did that for about a dozen years, and I used to say, and it was so funny. I don't think I've ever told you this. I used to say to people, I go, you know, strict heterosexuality or homosexuality is just a lack of creativity because they're all parts. They're just parts. And you can always figure out what to do with the parts if the person's interesting enough. And I can't tell you, saying that stuff in the late 70s and early 80s, I was blowing people's minds. They were like,
This was
even
before
today.
LGBTQRSTLMNOP.
Yeah, oh,
And now
way
it's,
before.
yeah.
Yeah. No,
it's like-
I grew up doing theater, so I met people who were, you know, gay and straight and all that very young. And I remember talking to my mother about it, and she's like, and bi, and she says, well, I suppose I could be bi. I really don't have the time to find out. She was so pragmatic about it. You know, she's married now 50-something years and stuff like that. And she had kids. She had a husband. She said, I have no time to actually find that out. She said, but it seems to me it would just double your chances of getting a date Friday night.
Yeah. Yep.
It seemed like a very pragmatic way to hear about it.
My mother-in-law is whom I credit with my open-mindedness at
Really?
this point in my life. She, God rest her, she was the kind of woman that you could call and say, so Elizabeth finally came out of the closet. Should I congratulate her or say duh? You know?
Yeah.
Well, you know, it was very funny because this grandmother that I was talking about before, she was when I had got engaged to a woman, and she sat me down and she goes, so you're engaged? And I said, yeah. And she goes, and you love her? Yeah. So are you sure you want to be engaged? And I was like, well, yeah, and get married. She goes, are you sure you want to be engaged to a woman? And I'm like, well, that's who I've fallen in love with. Okay, but you're sure, right? But she would never come. But it was just always like, I understand. I think she always struggled a little bit with how I could go back and forth. But she was always very like understanding. If I brought a boy home, I mean, I literally like brought a guy to have dinner at her house, and she, at the end of the day, at the end of the night when we were leaving, and at that point I didn't think she had a clue. She said to me and this guy, they're like, well, what are you doing tomorrow? Why don't you just stay here tonight? And I'm like, no, and I'm going, oh, no, we need to go home, blah, 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 blah.
This is my grandmother.
This is my grandmother. And she goes, well, you know, I've got the double bed in that room, and there's 2 twins you can push together, or you can have my bed, and I can sleep in the other room. And I was like, and I go, I gotta go, leave. And the guy I'm dating says, you said your grandmother didn't know. And I said, she doesn't. And he said, please.
Mamas always know.
Well, grandmas always know
At
in
least
this
in
business.
this case, yeah.
Yes.
So tell us more about, because Salt Lake City is not known as a bastion of liberality.
Not at the time. Yeah, I left in 1982 at graduation, and I haven't even gone back for my 40th high school reunion. But apparently it has become much more open to gay and Salt Lake City itself, not Utah.
Yeah, the cities are
but
different
the city
than
itself has become much more open and accepting and reality-based, if you will. But you know, it is something that is changing, as does everything. It all is supposed to change. We're not supposed to be going backwards in time. You know,
We're not supposed to be.
yes. Of course, I'm going backwards in time with my
You
choices
are.
of
I
clothing.
love your ensemble.
Yes,
Yes.
I'm Mrs. Robinson today.
And here's
Because
to
I
you,
don't want to be
Mrs.
really an
Robinson.
old lady, but I don't want to be pigeonholed as anything. You know,
Yeah.
I want to do what I want to do. What's fun for me? I was doing 1950s and 40s curls just till last week, and now I'm like, now I'm in the mid 60s.
So we're moving on a little bit.
Well, but you know, I want to invite you to look at it. You have, and it's not just women, it applies to men too, but you have 2 states. You can be old or you can be ageless.
That's us.
I'm about to say, Mary, I think you
Your
definitely
age
fall on
list.
the age list.
So you can go into any age you want, dress up and pimp yourself out like a tart.
Oh, Mary looks great in victory curls. I love this.
Okay.
The pin curls are fun, I'll tell you
They
that.
are.
So you have, now this is a webcomic.
It's a webcomic that I am publishing on Amazon.
Yep.
As it grows. That's the lovers. We've got, in the story, we've got Romeo and Julian, who are the top two. We've got Samuel and Benvolio. Benvolio is a pain in the gay man who, if you met him on the street, you'd want to slap him. But he is... and Samuel is a roustabout kind of a guy.
Now, is that our blonde and our
blonde and
blue-haired?
purple-haired
Okay.
persons there? Yes,
Cool.
and he's a roustabout who helps at the
fairs.
At the fairs, you know, we don't know if it's going to have a happy ending. We have no idea. Then we have the Friars. Okay, so the Friars own a restaurant called the Friars.
What else would they own?
But the blonde, gray-haired man, and that's Friar Friar Lawrence, and Friar Lawrence is married long time to Friar Juan. Juan and Larry have their own side story of when they met when Larry was getting out of the professional football.
Whoa,
and ran
that's a
into this
backstory.
and ran into this young man at a in Las Vegas. So this was
Scored a touchdown.
20 years previously. Yes. I think the line is don't around with him, but you didn't tell me I couldn't with he couldn't with me.
But I like it. We have Act 1, so that's the one you said was PG. So if you guys want to start with something PG, Act 1 is the one to do that with.
And then Act 2, as I said, goes into the
we're getting a little hotter.
PG-17, and in that we get the backstory of Juan and Larry, and and we also get the side story about the two are Benny and Sammy, and. But then we're progressing with the story of Romeo and Juliet. And it still all takes place within the 3 days of Romeo and Juliet.
Oh,
But
that's
it's-
great.
At the Ren Fair.
And it's at,
You're
yes,
really-
they're
that's
at
right,
the
it's a
Ren
very tight
Fair.
time frame
Yes,
that,
it's a
the
very
play.
tight, easy to write in time frame.
But
love at first sight.
Books that do that, yeah. No, and love at first sight happens that way.
It can. I mean, it's just,
I'm an example.
that's
I'm
right.
married 35 years to
To
the
a
guy.
blind date.
So I do have
date.
I've got a question. Do you have kids?
Yes, I do. I
And
have.
how are they with all of this?
My son does a little too much on the internet in areas that I wish he wouldn't go, but I'm glad that he's at least reading. And I don't mean the dark internet. I mean, the friends of our current president.
He is a bit conservative by nature.
He's a bit conservative by nature. Whereas my
nice.
daughter she's the one that's been my greatest patron, if you will. She went to school in California. She's working out there in California now at the Segerstrom Auditorium. You know, the sign that I used to wear on the shirt that I used to wear said Drama Mama. And
Oh,
on
yes.
the back it says, I raised mine.
I raised my favorite. Yes.
I raised my favorite actor or actress. Well, she's actually an instructor and in the educational aspect of entertainment. So, so she's out of the nest, and my son is in college, and he comes home to do his laundry basically. But they're both very supportive kids, and I attribute that to two things. One, by growing up in the Navy, you always saw the best of the best. You know, the people who were in the Navy had to be the high-end people, or they couldn't have that job because it was stressful. You know, we were among pilots, we were among, the people who command the ships, all that sort of thing. And I started thinking, I don't want my kids to think that everybody's perfect all the time. This isn't right, So I started taking them to Comic-Cons. And that's where nerds hang out. And by nerds, back in before before the Avengers, the nerds were people who weren't, the cream of the crop, if you will. We weren't the people that everybody said, oh, I want to be like that person.
That's what it really was.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to
Nobody
be like
wanted
them.
to be like that person. I went, in 1977, when I graduated from high school, I went to see Star Wars with my friend Mickey Belangi, and we were the only two people in the theater. Then I went to Europe for the summer. I came back, and everybody was like, I've been to it 22 times. I've been to it 52 times. I've been to it 188 times. And suddenly I was no longer that outcast person that read science fiction, went to science fiction movies, and talked about science fiction. Now I was part of this nerd culture, and it's just been growing since then.
It's true. Star Wars and Star Trek really did change that. It brought that.
Oh, absolutely.
Tremendous. Actually, I'm going to segue because Star Trek, we have one of Mary's fashion creations. We have a slide of it. I want to show.
We've got one up there. Do you
Oh, we
want
have
to talk
one.
about
Well,
We can
this
talk
is
about
the
that one,
Wonder
too.
Woman one.
Yeah, we
Let's
can
talk about Wonder Woman for a
Okay,
second.
well, let me tell you.
Speaking
that-
of Avengers.
Speaking of Avengers.
That's DC.
No, this
Sorry,
is
I'm mixing my
DC.
DC
Yes,
and my
the wrong
Marvel.
one.
Oh, terrible run. Terrible.
But I make Hawaiian style aloha shirts. And you know how some people knit to
Yep.
relax? This is my knitting. This is what I do because I enjoy the creation. And when it's done, it's done. Whereas everything else I'm doing is a constant push the rock up the hill. But this, you get to the end of it, you've got the perfectly turned collar, the buttons fit where they're supposed to, and you're done.
Yeah,
It's
there's a
wonderful.
completion.
There's a
Yes.
completion.
There's
So this
something
is
to be
where
said for
my
that.
art comes in. This is what I do as my art. But you see the stained glass in the background there. I also do stained
Gentleman.
glass.
Gentleman in blue.
See
Yes.
That's my blue boy.
Blue Boy used to be, you know what?
I
Yeah, okay.
I actually have
I'm
a
so
full
glad I don't
collection
blush.
of the Blue Boy books from the 1970s and 80s.
Okay.
Yes, I don't know who I'm willing them to yet, but
You have to be very
then
good.
I have people who like to I know a lot of collectors as a result of being involved with Gary Summers from the Antiques Roadshow. And he brought me this piece of material that was supposed to be cut into a number of banners. But it was from the 1970s. In fact, it says on it 1974, and it's linen. And
Oh
I
my
said,
gosh.
Who's going to fly a Star Trek flag? Wait, this will make a beautiful shirt.
And
So
there it is.
I have 2 Star Trek shirts from 1974 linens.
I love that.
Very, very throwback retro, if you will. Very.
It is, and yet, but so unique and so distinctive. I mean, and the three of them together like that too. I
Yep.
love it.
Yep.
And there's only one still alive. That's sad, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is.
Yep.
And then, because I know how to sew, I ran into this ragtag group of fundraisers called the Miracle Providers Northeast. And they raise funds for children who are affected by HIV and AIDS. It means that they're not infected. It means that they've got an uncle who passed away. They've got a brother who's...
So it's a support group.
It's a support
Yeah,
group.
they have parents who
exactly.
are-
They have parents. They have somebody within their family unit. And so it used to be that, AIDS was, nobody talked
Oh,
about
yeah,
it.
oh, yeah.
But nowadays it's like, it's going to be cured within the next 10 years. I'm sure of it. But in the meantime, we throw a huge Christmas party and wrap all these presents for many, many children, like 280 children each year. But the way we raise the money for the presents is we have drag shows.
Now
We do 2 or 3 a year.
Okay.
These gentlemen are all 40 and above, so it's a comedy drag show most of the time.
So we have to show our viewers.
So we have to go the extent.
Emma Bitch.
This is Emma Bitch, also known as Mark, and I won't use the rest of his name because we don't want to look him up.
Yeah, I know.
But Emma is a very humorous drag queen.
Well, this is not lost on me, and I do want to say, my fiance actually works for the New Hampshire AIDS Task Force.
I see.
So
And Highlander, it's a small
I'm
world.
going to have to, I'll have to mention, I don't know
If he knows Miracle Providers, yeah.
Miracle Providers or
Miracle
not.
Providers kind of sticks with the Lowell, Lawrence, northern Massachusetts
Yeah,
area.
and this is the southern New Hampshire,
Yeah,
so
so-
probably not. But this is not lost on me because this is Carol Burnett.
This is something I saw in the window and
had
couldn't
to
resist.
have it.
Yeah, let me tell you how
Scarlett, that's a lovely dress.
Yes. Finding that green and finding all of that tassel was a creative endeavor all on its own.
Several creative endeavors.
Yes. I've
And
made,
Emma carries it off
I've made
so
Emma
well.
many a costume. Recently, she let me do my own thing, not an idea from her, and I decided to do something in orange, and it's orange and spangly and everything. And finally, she said to me, "Why are we doing orange, darling?" And I said, "Because there's nothing that rhymes with it."
And I know I just went into, we've had Kelly Belt on. Kelly is doing Elsa from Elsa Mars
Yes.
from American Horror Story Freak Show, or Freaks I think it was called. No, it was called Freak Show. I take it back. And so she's doing that one for Emma, which I think is perfect.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
if anybody could look like Jessica Lange, it's probably Emma.
Scary Jessica Lange. It's Emma.
Jessica Lange has become scary Jessica Lange.
Well, yeah,
At
she has
times.
now. Yeah, she's
She's been
come
willing
along-
to go with that place, which I think is great. We were talking earlier about the gaps for women,
Yeah.
and where we are and where we aren't when we
Yeah.
get older. And Jessica Lange, who was a pin-up perfect kind of beauty in her youth, has been willing to do the ugly stuff.
Mm-hmm.
In American Horror Story, she has looked like hell. She did Grey Gardens, where she looked like hell, and she's just willing to talk about being vulnerable. Just really.
Well, I
You
think
know.
that people that really have brought this to the forefront are people like Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin,
look-
allowing
I love
themselves to be made fun of as older women with gay husbands that they didn't know were gay.
love that show.
I love
Frankie
that
and
show.
Jess, Frankie and Johnny.
Yep, I
No,
love that
it's-
show.
Isn't that one Frankie and
Grace
Johnny?
and Frankie.
Oh, Grace and Frankie,
Grace
sorry.
and Frankie,
Grace,
right.
Grace,
Grace
and
and
Frankie.
Frankie.
And then, you go to the next level, and the Golden Girls, while it's from the 80s, at least it started giving women an opportunity to think there's more outside of being, not 20 years old,
Right.
And now, because of horrible person, tall, handsome, not person who thought that he could tell women what to do in the bedroom so they could get a job in Hollywood.
Yeah.
We won't say his name. I think because of that, a lot more is going to happen for older women. We're going to finally say, that's enough of that.
Well, and I always remember it being considered a groundbreaking cover, and I don't know if either one of you will remember this or not, but they had 5 famous women who were 50 and older on the front cover of Life magazine.
And Elizabeth Taylor was one of them.
And Barbara Streisand was one
Yeah.
of them, and
She still looks great.
they were all looked. They were wearing white hair and gray hair and Diane Keaton, and they were being, and it was
Yeah.
it was a whole salute to all of these talented, famous women. Many who stayed,
But many who can't get a job right now to save their lives.
Yeah.
because-
Although you're right.
more
though,
than ever have though.
Yeah, I
More.
mean, we were
The
ju-
number is increasing.
You
Yes.
mentioned Barbara Streisand, who I just checked this because my husband and I were talking about this. Barbara Streisand is 75. And of course, she did Hello Dolly when she was quite young. She did the movie version. Carol Channing, who did the original Broadway version, is still alive. And she is 80-something years
Yep.
old.
I
God
had
love her.
no idea.
Oh yeah,
And Bette Midler is finishing her run in Hello Dolly at 71.
Yeah.
She is only 4 years younger than Barbara Streisand is now, and the role will be taken over by Bernadette Peters, who is 68. We checked. We were asking Google their ages because we were really curious to see these women who are
Remember
still
when we were
doing
smart
these.
enough to remember all this stuff and there
Yeah.
wasn't Google?
well, I
Thank
don't-
goodness, actually. But I love the fact, and actually, Hello Dolly just hit a record, the highest price ever for a single ticket on Broadway.
Oy.
The I actually saw Carol Channing in Hello Dolly, but
No, really? I love Carol Channing.
What were you, 12?
But I saw Debbie Reynolds when she did the Broadway version of the Unsinkable Molly
Brown, yes.
And she was in her mid-60s, and she was bellying up to the bar, and she was jumping up on the thing. And the other one who is absolutely still amazing is Shirley MacLaine,
Oh, yeah.
who still
Yeah.
can do high kicks and dance numbers.
Yeah, the dancers
and-
forever. Cheetah Rivera has been on Broadway in the
Liza
last few
Minnelli.
years. Liza Minnelli. And Angela Lansbury, who's in her 90s, still does Broadway.
I still, yeah. I
Amazes
saw
me.
her when
It's
she did
just
Blythe
that-
Spirit not that long ago.
It's just that they're not doing the shows on CBS, NBC, and ABC, where most people, that's the great melting ground. That's
Right.
the great place where you're supposed to, take the next, that's where the people, the regular guy who can't afford cable gets his information,
Right.
okay?
So these
And
folks are still
these
on-
folks are still not within that regular guy's
Well, and even
periphery.
Slowly
Grace
but
and
surely.
Frankie is on
Netflix.
Netflix.
Yep.
It's not on regular television.
No,
I'm trying
not
to
yet.
think. Well, I know I haven't seen the new Will and Grace, but Grace is getting up there.
Yes,
They
and
all
she's
are.
allowed herself to be a heavy woman in
Oh,
this.
heavier. She's
and
heavier,
I love that.
And yeah, she is. And Karen has always been on the older side, even though she doesn't like to admit her age.
Yes.
And actually on Sex and the City, and they've been rerunning the movie, they let Samantha hit 50. Mm-hmm. It was a big deal
Yeah.
to do that. When that series started, the girls were in their late 30s and they hit their late 40s. And stuff, and look at this. I mean, come on, back to the picture of Emma. Talk about timeless.
Yes. Yes.
And Cara Burnett is still around. I mean, my gosh.
Yes.
Yeah,
you
she
don't
was-
you don't have to.
Yeah, she was-
Creativity knows no age. Laughter knows no age.
Nope. And
Joy
yes.
knows no age.
The last thing I saw Carol Burnett was when she was Sue Sylvester's mother on Glee, and they did the song number together.
How could you resist that? I still want her to do one. I think she should do a benefit performance of Sunset Boulevard, the musical. I just
With the
once.
face.
Hey, the face.
The Norma Desmond face, Madam.
So do we have more pictures of hers to share? Because
Oh, we do. I
wanna
think
make
we
sure
do.
we get to-
Oh, the stained glass.
Okay, yes, I do
is-
stained glass. And this is one of my pride and joys. This one went up for auction at a small convention, a small science fiction convention. And it went into fight mode auction.
Woo!
And I was like, so happy, so happy.
Oh, well,
And it's one of those things that when I'm making stained glass, I can't do anything else. It's like focus, focus, focus. So I don't do a lot of stained glass currently because I've got too much else on my plate right now.
Isn't this great though?
What do
It's-
you think of the fact, I have to ask you, because you've got to be a Doctor Who fan, because you did the TARDIS. So what do you think of the fact that they now have a female doctor?
About time.
About time.
It's about time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know any true Doctor Who fan who's upset about it.
I don't either. I
No.
don't either.
No, not at all.
Everyone has been like, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and
Great.
and they took some risk with having Peter Capaldi go
As
on.
an older man,
And as an older
after they
man.
had
Especially
the
after
two
somebody so
heartthrobs
young,
prior
yes.
to him.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
never liked the new Doctor initially anyway.
No, nobody ever
Ever.
does.
You don't-
ever.
like
I had
the-
a hard time. I was a number 4 fan,
See?
okay? And when number 5 came along, I was like, oh, he's just a bell ringer. And then I fell in love with Peter Davidson after all. So,
Yeah. That's why they have the T-shirts. You never forget your first Doctor.
Yeah, yeah.
And your first is, and it always takes, and there's always, social media, because we just, as you
Right.
just said, things have changed as far as how we talk about it. But yes, there'll be the social media, don't like her, I miss so-and-so, I miss so-and-so. And then we'll all warm up the way we're
Yeah.
supposed to.
yeah, it's like it's like Darren in Bewitched.
yeah.
Sooner or later,
Which-
you just kind of forget that it's somebody else.
Yeah, you go from Dick York to Dick Sargent.
Yes.
Yeah, you make that jump. Well, and it's interesting. I mean, it took me a long time to warm up to Batman because I was raised with,
Adam West.
Adam West.
Whom I met, who's a wonderful man, and I'm so sorry that he's not with us any longer.
Yeah, I mean, and
Lovely man.
he held on. Of course, we've talked about this on the show. One of my early TV, so to speak, role models that I absolutely adored was Diana Rigg as Emma Peel in The
yeah.
Avengers. I have the whole series.
Mark does too.
She redefined a lot of what women were allowed to do.
Yeah.
And, and it was really, now, we didn't do the Mary Tyler tribute on this show, did we?
No, we
Because we hadn't started Dragons yet. I did one on Web of Light when Mary Tyler passed.
Mary Tyler Moore, yeah.
Because as Laura Petrie, she let women wear pants.
It's a big deal.
Capri. it
Oh,
was
the
big-
capri pants in the home. Yes, absolutely.
changed, but each of these women changed
They did.
and moved forward. I mean, I always thought that B. Arthur and Maud was a
That was huge. That one
groundbreaker.
did
That was
many
a
things.
groundbreaking.
Even All in the Family did a lot of that.
But that's
right.
the problem. We don't have those kinds of groundbreaking group dynamics anymore because everybody can choose what they want to see.
Right, you can't get the ratings you
Yeah,
used to get.
you can't.
No.
You
Because there's
get,
not 5 channels, there's 50,000.
yeah, and people can pick and choose. I only want to watch sports all the time, period.
Right.
Or, and so what do they learn about otherwise, Or I only want to watch, what's the name of that horrible one with the guys with all the beards and the ducks?
Oh, Duck Dynasty
Yeah.
is.
Duck Dynasty.
Never
I
seen
only-
it.
Oh, no,
don't.
but you could binge on nothing but the reality shows or the reality competition shows, and you can avoid things
You
that
can
try
avoid
to.
things that try to give you a bigger brain about
So
it.
But
Miss
Mary
anything.
also has her flyers for
I have a couple
we have
other things.
The Northeast Comic Cons, which
No,
will come
actually,
up.
I now do.
Oh, sorry.
Because Northeast Comic Con is going to become part of the Museum of Popular Culture in Chelmsford,
We have to get them on.
Massachusetts.
Yes.
We will get that. We will get that going. So now it's the Boston South Coast Comic Con and Anime Fest.
Yay!
And it's run at the Hanover Mall in what used to be the JCPenney space. It's an experimental, okay? So March of last year's when we had our first one, and that was the one that was the very last convention that Adam West was at.
That's right.
He passed away about 3 weeks later. And so that's where I knew Adam West from. But this is the small conventions. Remember this? This is a throwback convention. Okay?
Yeah.
Remember when comic book writers really came to comic book shows? And
Oh, then
Yeah,
yes, they
now-
talk about that on like the third on the Big Bang Theory,
yeah,
the small ones.
Yeah, nowadays you go to these Comic Cons, and if name a Christopher actor isn't there
Right.
with 30,000 of your closest non-friends, then it's not a Comic Con.
Right, and the Hollywood is doing releases and trailers. Movies and television are trying to get find fan bases, whereas this is the
The original, the
The
way that
original,
we
the way
used
the
to do
fans,
it,
yeah.
where the fans came in and made fun, and we had vendors who had weird stuff, and
you found your tribe.
you found your tribe.
Well, and it's funny because I was watching, I'm one of those people that when I have a movie that I really like, and one of my most favorite recent movies was Wonder Woman.
Yes.
Huge breakthrough in so many ways. You and I had a whole show on
We
it.
did. Speaking of older women looking strong and fierce and
But
Powerful.
they were doing, they do all of the add-ons when you buy the
the DVD.
the
yes.
DVD. And so I was doing all of the interviews. And they had, and this writer that wrote Wonder Woman and this writer that wrote Wonder Woman, they were interviewing like 4 different people.
Right.
And in that, and I was like, I don't remember watching those additionals on the things like the Avengers or the Justice League that ever interviewed the actual illustrators that were making the change and the people that were writing the comic books. You didn't have those. This is the first time I've seen one of those.
Yeah, they
on the
really went
movie.
back to the.
But this is what
core.
my goal is to go back to the creators, if you will, and to celebrate creation.
So will Gal be here?
No, Gal will not be there because Gal was not a creator. She's
No.
an actress who personified something that was created
created
by
for her,
someone.
that's true.
But you should go see the movie that's called
Oh,
Doctor, what's his
Marston
name? Dr.
and-
Marston and His Wonder Women.
Right.
He was one of the originators of polyamory. And
Okay.
he's the one that created Wonder Woman.
Yep.
Yep.
And the lie detector.
And the lie detector.
Yeah, I've read a little bit about it, but they have a movie out.
Yes.
It's coming the next few weeks.
Yeah.
Oh, who's playing Dr. Matt Marston? Do we know?
It's not Benedict Cumberbatch, but it's somebody who looks like him,
Yes, you're right.
which is not a bad thing.
No, it's not.
No, no, he's telling you. We are winding down.
Okay.
As always.
Well, the reason that she and I met is because of this little con I call not a con. It's not a con. It's a place to go enjoy being a nerd with other nerds, and it's 21 plus because isn't it fun to talk about nerdy stuff with a nice cocktail in your hand?
Yes. We get nerdy and drunk. You should see me at drunk karaoke.
No,
She's
Well,
great.
I might have to attend some of these. I have to get over to the studio. I have not made
You
it to
have
the
to come
studio.
to
And then,
Western
of
Avenue,
course,
yes.
Romeo and Julian is played on a website called Just Yowie, because it means nothing.
.com.
.com. And my famous saying is, I'm the dirty old lady of the Dirty Old Ladies League, and my theme is, not dead yet.
Not dead yet. I like that.
So I'm going to
Not-
keep living, doing stuff.
Yep, I've never done a web comic before, but you may have enticed me enough to have to check this out. As we're wrapping out this dragons, unicorns, and other creative creatures, creativity is ageless. Laughter is timeless. Things that inspire and motivate started before man and will continue after the great joke known as man has come to a close. Because the gods are funny that way. We are here today and enjoyed time with somebody who has showed us yet another definition of timeless and ageless. So what's yours, and how are you going to become it? Namaste.